Hello, friends. Welcome to the Free to Be Authentic podcast. This is your host, Jen Quintana. I am excited to share another story with you about how I've designed my own life, and I hope that it inspires you to take some actionable steps and change your life. So, this morning I want to talk about a little bit about kind of the ideas and the thoughts and kind of the first seeds that really helped me to make some changes in my life and to really shift things in my life into a new direction, and some of the hiccups that I found on that path, and how I was able to get myself back into the stream of things and really moving forward at a rapid rate, and where I am today. So, and part of this journey includes my 10-year plan to live in Maui full time. So I will share that with you. It started with I have always worked for insurance companies. In my early 20s, even like right out of high school, I got my first jobs working for an insurance company, and I worked my way up from one company to another. I tried to stay at one company for a few years to get some experience, and then when it seemed like that work situation just I wasn't thriving anymore, I would look for my next opportunity. And one of my first career jobs was working at Unum, which is a big life and disability insurance carrier, and I worked there for 6 years. And in that job, I pioneered a new position. I kind of would always I would read self-help books, and I would hear things like, see what needs around you need to be met, and then try to be the solution for those needs. And so in that job, the managers around me were always going into these meetings, closed door meetings, and everybody was freaked out about how they were going to make their renewal goals. And I was brand new. And actually my first day on that job was the day after this merger had been announced, when everybody was sure that they were going to be let go because of the merger. So I knew I had only a few months to prove that I was really worth keeping around before layoffs started happening. So I was a single mom. I couldn't afford to lose my job. I needed to make myself really useful really fast. And I was reading self-help books and started paying attention to what was going on around me. And everyone was panicked about this renewal goal. No one seemed to know why they weren't making their renewal goals. Everyone was sure they were selling renewals, but they didn't seem to be making their goals. The home office kept having these conference calls, and our field office in Los Angeles was just always at the bottom. So I started reading manuals that were laying around the office, and there was one manual called a renewal manual. And so I thought, oh, well, let's start there, right? So I read the renewal manual, and I noticed that there was this part of the renewal process where you were supposed to, once the renewal was sold, then somebody in the field office had to do something in the mainframe computer system. This is all before everybody had internet. And then that tweak in the mainframe system would cause a situation where the home office would then bill the client for the higher rate. So it would update the billing. So I asked some of the people that worked in my office that were training me, I said, hey, do you guys do this process to go into the mainframe and click this, box, check this box that the renewal has been sold? And they said, no, we don't do that. Home office does that. And I said, oh, really? Okay. So then the next time I had a chance to talk to a home office underwriter, I just asked them kind of on the side, I'm like, hey, when we sell a renewal, do you guys check this box in the mainframe? And they said, no, the field office is supposed to do that. So I went to the sales manager and I said, hey, I just read this renewal manual. It looks like there's this step that we haven't been doing in our office. And I think that might be why the billing isn't updating. And even though you're selling renewals, it's not reflected in what home office has in their records. So he was very interested in this. He said he had written that manual. He wanted to know what I had read, what page. He did some research. And then next thing you know, there was a fire drill, and all of my mentors were having to go into the mainframe and click off the checkbox for all of the renewals for that year. And then by the next month, our office was making their renewal goal. So because I did that extra step, I went a little bit outside of my box. I took it upon myself to read some manuals that were laying around the office because I saw that there was a need. I was able to find a solution, and then I was given a little bit more credibility going forward. And so I kept on doing that. I kept on talking to other people I would meet about how their office was making their renewal goals, and one person put me in touch with another person and what strategy was working for them. I had lunch at a training in New Jersey. They sent me to a training in New Jersey. Nobody wanted to go to this training. They sent me. I was a new girl. But I had an opportunity to sit next to somebody from the New York office, and I knew from those conference calls that the New York office was meeting all their renewal goals. So I asked him what they were doing, and he put me in touch with a technical guy in his office who had created an Access database to track all their renewals, and that was why he thought they had been successful. I talked to this guy. He says, today's my last day at the company, but I'll send you my file, my template. So he sends me his Access database template. I had no idea how to use Access databases. So I went out to Barnes & Noble and bought a book on how to, it was like Access Databases for Dummies or something like that. So I figured it out. I created a template for the LA office. I presented it to the same sales manager. He thought it was great. So we started tracking renewals. So I created a position there. I eventually got a title called Renewal Coordinator. And then they created that position. Once I was successful tracking renewals and creating this system, they implemented it for every other office. And then I trained the West Region renewal coordinators, and I kind of created my own niche within that company. And I did that for a number of years, and I made our renewal goal every year, and eventually I was invited to be a part of the home office renewal strategy. So I was part of the team that was actually setting the strategy for the whole company. And that was like, it felt very, I was young, I was in my 20s, and they asked me to kind of be the representative voice from the field on that committee. And it was a very, I was really, just excited that I was included in something so much bigger than just my office. So that went on for a number of years. We made our renewal goal year after year. And eventually I got a little burned out. And it was our actual book of business in the LA office was getting to be so profitable because we had successfully renewed it year after year that we had fewer and fewer cases that we could actually renew at an increase. So I kind of worked myself out of a job almost at that point. Like there wasn't as much work for me to do, so they wanted me to start doing some other sales coordinator work, and I really wasn't feeling it. So I decided to leave that job. I gave plenty of notice, and I said, I'm just going to look for new opportunities. I'm not really sure what I want to do yet, but I just know that I feel like this is ending for me. So fortunately, we had talked to my boyfriend into buying a duplex with the equity in his house. First, I talked him into buying a house. Then I talked him into using the equity to buy a duplex to rent to my sister. And then we sold that duplex after my sister passed, and we made a lot of money on the real estate. So we had some cash in the bank, and I felt like I could take a little break from my job while I found my next perfect job. And I had a little bit of a panic 3 months into unemployment when I realized like this new job thing isn't coming very quickly. But I still felt like it was the right thing for me to do to leave my previous company. And I think I did reach out to my past employer a couple times to say, hey, will you guys take me back? Because I was really starting to get nervous. But I held out, and it worked out, and I got a call from a past client that I had met at that insurance company, and they needed some help, so I filled in their office on a temporary basis. And through that, I met some salespeople for other insurance companies who knew some other consulting firms and brokers who needed some help. And I ended up getting an interview with Jan Suggs, who was a team leader at Aon Consulting in Los Angeles. And she was a hard interviewer. I was a little nervous when I left her office. I thought, wow, this is a woman in a corner office who's over 50. And it looks like there's a woman in every corner office at Aon at that time. And I was super impressed. It was very different than what I had experienced at Unum, where everyone was young and the only people that were in corner offices were men. So I was excited to work for her. I was excited to work in a company where women were being successful. I thought she might be a hard ass, so I was a little bit worried, but I knew it was the right thing to do, so I took the job. It ended up being a fantastic experience for me. I don't think I was the best consultant at that time as I could be. I was just learning how to be a consultant, and the strategies that had worked for me at Unum weren't really working for me there. I had to learn a whole different way of doing business. But I still remembered that those self-help books said, find a need and fill it, and you'll be successful. And so it turned out that there wasn't a niche for me at Aon Consulting in the same way that there was at Unum, but that actually life and disability insurance was my niche. Like what had been the whole world at Unum was now my niche at Aon Consulting, because everyone at Aon Consulting knew medical and dental, which I didn't know. But very few people knew life and disability, which seemed kind of small potatoes compared to medical insurance. But it was an important thing that they all needed help with and that I could do. So I started helping everyone in the office with their life and disability clients. And because I knew how carriers priced renewals, I was able to negotiate those renewals for all of the clients at Aon very successfully. And I was able to help out Aon's clients to keep their prices down. So all the things that I was doing at Unum to get prices up, I then used on the other side of the table to help negotiate prices down. And so that was a great experience for me as well, to see both sides of it. Jan was an amazing, she's a mentor. I'd say mentor, but she's really was more than that for me. She really introduced me to a lot of people within the industry. She really taught me how to be a woman that's successful at work. She really had a lot of, she had come up through business at a time when it was hard for women to come up through business. And she did it in a way that was authentic to being a woman. Some women in business will try to beat the boys at the boys club game by being a better boy. And that never works, by the way. So rather than learning how to play golf, she actually insisted that we would never play golf. We don't golf. So I loved that about her. We don't golf, we spa. And we would go to spa days. And we would take clients to lunches at the Beverly Hills Hotel and to other lovely places. The Beverly Hills Hotel was our client, so that was easy. And so we did all this. We had great lunches, and we worked really hard. And she had a real team ethic. It was one for all and all for one. If we had a client meeting on Monday morning and we all had to work the weekend to get the report out, then we all worked the weekend, which was really hard for me. I was a single parent, and I was also going to school full time on the weekends. And so I had to rearrange a lot to make that happen. It was really not easy. But if one of us worked late, Jan was there working late with us. And it really showed me how to be a leader in a way that's not dictating and delegating, but really standing with you side by side and shoulder to shoulder to get the work done for the outcome, and never throwing anyone under the bus. She never, if a report didn't go well or a client fired us, it was never about blaming one person on the team or whose fault it was. It was always about, as a team, we could all do better. And as a team, we took the hit because it wasn't really reflective of one person's work. It was reflective of the team's work because we all did it. So I really appreciated that about her style. I really appreciated her uber professionalism and her real cognizance of the struggles of women in the workforce. Her, she would go out of her way to help women up. She would go out of her way to give people opportunities that might have been overlooked. And she would really look for the strengths in each individual and help build a team that complemented each other. And so she was really an amazing sponsor, really, for me in my career. And so after she retired, it was right in the middle of the recession. She couldn't sell her home here in Los Angeles. I had some experience property managing the duplex that I'd had my boyfriend purchase. a few years before. And we had subsequently purchased another rental property with the proceeds from the first one. And so Jan asked me to manage her home for her. She was going to lease it out until the recession broke and she could sell it, because she wanted to retire out of state. So I did that. And then one of her friends heard that I was doing that and was in a similar situation and asked me to help manage her home. And then her realtor asked her if she could contact me for another one of her clients. And I ended up with like 7 houses that I was managing. I had to create a property management company as a side hustle. And then I helped a friend out with leasing some apartments that her family owned. And then one of the first people whose houses I was leasing, it was actually a condo in an association. They needed a new homeowner association manager. And so I did a presentation, I put it together, and they hired me to do that. So I had 7 houses, 2 60-unit apartment buildings that I was leasing, and an HOA that I was managing. I really wasn't qualified to do any of those things, but somehow I thought I could do it, and I did it. And I just, would find a book that would explain it or look something up online, and figure it out and do it. And really, I learned a lot of customer service skills in that process. I learned how to write up my own contract for clients. And when things came up in the property management business, I had to evict someone. I had to go through the court process. One house we got taken to small claims court by a tenant, and we had to go through that process. And every day I would just take it as like, well, this is what's happening, and this is what I got to learn how to do. And without any expectation of the outcome, I just would take it one day at a time and do what needed to be done. I got really good relationships with plumbers and electricians and people that would help me, and it worked out. And I didn't love being a property manager, I guess. There were parts of it that I loved, but it never really grew to be enough income to replace my day job. And so it ended up just being extra work. And so eventually when the recession ended, as each of the owners was able to sell their house, it kind of naturally just closed down the business. And then I was back down to just the one rental property that my now husband owned. And so it was just kind of a natural progression that little side business helped me get through the recession. My husband had lost his job during that time, so it really kind of gave us a few $100 extra a month to make ends meet, which was helpful. And so I went from that to leaving Aon. There was a situation, I had a new manager after Jan. There was a problem with a client. There was a mistake made. I didn't make the mistake, but the person who made the mistake had already left the company. And so to save face with the client, my boss threw me under the bus. That was my first time under the bus. And he said that I should have caught the mistake, so therefore it was my mistake, and I got written up. And so I realized that it wasn't a one for all and all for one kind of a situation. And I decided that I was not interested in working for that man anymore. So I gave my 3 weeks notice. I wrapped up all my projects. I had like 30 projects on my desk. I got them all wrapped up. And I resigned, again, without anything lined up. But for some reason, I felt like I could do that at that moment. I think financially, I borrowed like $6,000 from my sister or something. So that I could just have a little cushion to take a break from work and look for another job. So I did that, and then I ended up getting a job at a little small company. Somebody who I used to work with at Aon was working there, and so the recruiter put me in touch with him. We knew each other. The interview went well. He hired me, but it turned out to not be a great position, and it was just a lot of drama at that place. And it was a really small company. It just didn't feel aligned with me. And so I was there. I was doing it. I barely had been there for a year when I got a phone call for a bigger opportunity to go work at another consulting firm. A former coworker had put my name in the hat for a client assignment, which was like my dream client. So I interviewed with them, and the whole time I was interviewing, I was watching my horoscope, but I just knew that this was going to work out because my horoscope was saying that my 10th house of fame was highlighted, and that's always where I get career success, is when I have positive planetary energy in my 10th house. And so I was just watching my horoscope going, this job's going to happen. I'm going to get this job. And sure enough, I got offered the position, and I was working for Disney. I had an office at Disney, and I was employed by this consulting firm and kind of planted at Disney. And that was my dream job. And Disney's headquarters was in my hometown of Burbank, and I loved it. I was so happy. I only had one client rather than 30 clients. It was a very big client with a lot of responsibility, but it was great. So I loved it. I worked there for about 3 years, and I was very happy there. There was some kind of weird politics there, but overall, it was a great experience. But it was there. I was working there when I really was thinking about my cash flow, and really started to think about how I could look up towards mentors and people in life who I know, public figures who really have shown the rest of us that there is a different way to do things, and that there is a way to find success even from nothing. So one of my biggest people role models that I look up to is Oprah Winfrey. Here's a woman that came from a family without much means, and she's one of the most successful women in the world. And she had everything stacked against her, from abuse to being a woman, African American, and none of these things stopped her from becoming one of the most successful women in the world. And so she's always been someone that I look to say, how did Oprah do that? And I do believe that there are there's an undercurrent to life. It's like life is a winding road, and we're all blindfolded. And we keep trying to look out through the blindfold or to see through our eyes, but it's impossible, because the path really is a winding path, and we have to feel it. We have to feel the curves in the road. We have to sense it, and we have to really figure out how to go with that flow and stay on that winding road, and not keep running off the road. And so I think for a lot of people, life is a struggle. I think for me, life has been a struggle. But trying to really figure out, I call it a wormhole, like how to get into that wormhole that gets you to the top, or that gets you out of the struggle. How do I get into that wormhole? And so I started reading Steiner's work on social finance. Steiner created the Waldorf schools, and my children were now in Waldorf schools. So I was curious about his work. And I read Social Finance, the original work that he wrote. And he talked about money in a very different way than I've ever heard anyone talk about money. And a few of the things that really stuck with me in that, I was experiencing that I was constantly running on overdraft. Like I was making good money, but I was also always overextended or having to put something on a credit card. And so I thought, I just want cash flow. Like I just want to be able to live with cash flow. And I'm constantly overextended. I'm constantly having to borrow $200 from here or put $200 on a credit card. And why can't I just get cash flow going? So when Steiner talked about that there are 3 kinds of money, that there's purchase money for purchases, that there's investment money, and that there's money that you spend on like charities and donations, and that the money that you give to charities and donations is like, it's old money, right? So it's money that you've saved up, or it's extra money in a way. And so he talks about that money has a life cycle, that it dies. And so people that hoard up money, it's not living anymore. And so they need to give it away to charity in order for it to renew and to have a new life cycle. And so he talked about that. He talked about everyday purchase money, the money that you spend. That's the money that's in your budget. And then he talked about these long-term investment money and how sometimes you could take loans out to make long-term investments. And that was a different kind of money, so that was okay. And then he talked about how finances are intrinsically tied to the individual. And this is the one that stumped me for the longest time. I read that over and over again. I'm like, I don't understand. And so I was really reading it. I was also reading some podcasts from Michael Beckwith at the time, because I knew that Oprah was into Michael Beckwith at the time, and Michael Beckwith was talking about money in a different kind of way. And so then I was really sitting with this whole thing about finances are intrinsically tied to the individual. And then I heard some stuff that like Iyanla Vanzant said about money. And she seemed to agree with that in a way. I couldn't quite understand it at the time, but now I think I do understand it. I had this one day where I was throwing a birthday party for my daughter. I had volunteered to provide childcare for an event at the church that same evening. And we were having my daughter's birthday party at the church in the playground. So I had a bounce castle being set up, and I had decided I was going to hand make all these elaborate party favors that I found on Pinterest, and as if I was like a stay-at-home mom or something. I don't know what I was thinking. And I invited like 40 kids. So we had this huge party. Also, my daughter wanted like this amazing cake, and I found this picture of a cake on Pinterest that looked like a sandcastle. It was a mermaid-themed party. So we made a sandcastle cake, party favors, mermaid-themed party favors. I was hot gluing all night and hand stamping cotton bags for party favors. It was over the top party. And so at the end of hosting this 40-kid birthday party all day at church that I'd stayed up all night preparing for after my day job ended, and then waiting for the people to come take away the bouncy castle, and at the same time then walking into church to then babysit 7 kids. And my husband took my younger children home from the party without leaving me behind at church to do the childcare for the church event. And by the end of the night, it was like 9 o'clock at night, I was finally in my car ready to come home. And it was a short drive on the freeway. And as I get on the freeway, I go for a couple miles, and as I'm close to where I need to exit, my car stops in the middle of the freeway. Like, it just runs out of gas. My gas meter says I still have gas, but it's totally just run out of gas. And so I was just sitting there in the middle of the road and the freeway in Los Angeles, 9:30 at night, in the slow lane, not moving. I was exhausted from head to toe. Like, I was so exhausted and ready to be at home in bed. And I just sat there, and I was just like, wow, let me just acknowledge this moment. Like, I am in the middle of the freeway in my car, not moving, and I am overextended. Like, I was exhausted. And I said those words. I said, like, I was taking a self, like, check-in, like a mindfulness moment of like, where am I right now, right? Right now, I am overextended. And it clicked with me. I got it. I'm always overextended in my finances, and it's intrinsically tied to me, the individual. I am always overextended in life. And so as I am overextended in life, this is kind of my MO. This is what I do. I'm overextended. I committed to too many things. And and that mirrors in my finances. I'm always overextended in my finances. And so I got it. I called my husband. I said, I'm stuck on the freeway. I'm fine. Don't come get me. I know you have the kids. I said, I'll call AAA. I called AAA. Of course, my membership had expired, but I was able to just pay it quickly over the phone, and they came out and put some gas in my car, and I was on my way again. And I got home, I don't know, it was probably 10:30, and I went to bed exhausted. But the next day, I changed my MO. I cut like 10 things out of my to-do list. I stopped overcommitting. I said no to some things that I was feeling really pressured to do, and I made a spreadsheet for all my financial stuff, and I really started to track my income and my outgo, and I stopped committing to things that I really couldn't afford to do. And so by keeping track of that and keeping track of my calendar and not overcommitting to things, I started to allow myself to buy things at the grocery store from the already prepared deli section. Like, I used to buy raw materials thinking I had to make all this food from scratch when I had zero time to do that or even capacity to do that. And so then I was wasting money on that when I could just buy already prepared food that we would actually eat, that we didn't have to spend 2 hours cooking after work. And so I just changed everything. And I stopped overextending myself, and I stopped committing to things that I just couldn't possibly squeeze into the day. And I'm really cognizant of my time now and not overcommitting and overextending and not doing things just because everybody says you have to do all these things. No, I don't have to do all those things. I don't even have to throw my daughter a birthday party. I don't. Like, when the time is right and we have some free time, we can acknowledge that in a big celebratory way. And the day of her birthday, we can just go out to dinner, and it can be just small and nice. And so that's when I kind of learned about money flow, was when I was still working at Disney, and I got my money flowing in a much more positive direction. And I stopped being overdrawn and relying on credit cards at the end of every month. And so when I finally got into a good, healthy place financially there, we also decided that it was time to sell our family home, that we had really outgrown it, and that it wasn't serving us, and that our kids were spending far too much time in the car driving to school. We needed to move closer to their school. And so we made another big shift to move closer to our children's school. And we ended up, the only house that we could get in our price range that we liked was right across the street from her school. So we ended up buying that house. And then as we were walking across the street from our new house to my daughter's school for an orientation, I think it was, my daughter said to me, "Mommy, when I go to school here, you're going to come with me and you're going to work there too." And I said, "No, Mom has a whole other career. I work at Disney." And she said, "No, you are." She was quite certain. So I thought, that's interesting. So I always thought, I always had worked on the boards of her school, and I thought Waldorf education was amazing. And so I thought, I wonder if I ever could work in a Waldorf school. I spent a lot of time at the school. They kind of had become our community of parents and friends. And so I looked online to see if there were any job openings at the school. And there were like 3. There were non-teaching jobs that I could marginally be qualified for. And so I thought, that's interesting. So I called up and I ended up applying for the director of admissions position. And I ended up getting an offer from them. And it was like a 70% pay cut. But I did the spreadsheet work, the magical spreadsheet work, and I figured out that one of the benefits of working there was that it came with free tuition. And so tuition was like $24,000 for each child. In order to take home $24,000, you have to earn like $30-something thousand because of taxes. So really it was like a $60,000 value. And then I figured, well, if I just work at their school and I have a lot of holidays off, and I just live across the street from my work, I don't have a commute anymore, I could probably clean my own house. And my husband could probably mow the lawn. And the new house doesn't have a pool, so we're going to cut out that expense of the pool man. So I just figured it all out, and I thought, I think we could make this work. It'll be tight, but it could work. And wow, what a shift in my life it would be. Even though I loved my job at Disney, I wasn't spending any time with my kids. We had a nanny that would spend time with them after work. I was working a lot of hours. And I thought, wow, how magical would it be to work at a Waldorf school? So I did that. I quit my job. I cried. It was so hard because I loved that job. But I had this opportunity to do something different. And it was life-changing for me. It really was life-changing for me. I worked there for 3 years. The first 2 years were really magical. The last year was terrible. I had a really horrible experience the last year, and I ended up quitting under duress. I, I got thrown under the bus in a big way. It was my second time being thrown under the bus. But it was really, there was some dark forces there. It was not good. And so I had to resign from that job just to save my own sanity. And it was really, I was a wreck. It was hard. And then my kids were still going to school there, so I had to take them to school and pick them up every day and see these administrators and board members that worked there still that had been cruel to me. But at the end of the day, it was actually a blessing, because I sought some outside counsel. I talked to my psychic. I started doing hatha yoga, which I had never had a yoga practice before. I had a chiropractor who was really helping me figure out my back pain. And I was able to take some time for myself to really heal. My husband had received an inheritance, so we had some cushion in the bank again. So I was able to just really take some time to figure out where I was and what I needed to do next. And I was feeling stuck, and I was feeling sad, and I was just taking myself to yoga every morning like it was my job, and I didn't know why or what, but I just knew that if I stayed at home in my pajamas, I would fall into depression. And so I just made myself go to yoga every morning like it was my job, relentless. And then I spent the rest of the day really trying to meditate and tune into, like, who am I and where am I? And at one point I called my psychic and I said, I'm in this really stuck place. And she said, you need to sell your house. You need to get out of there. She goes, you need to pull the kids from school. She said, that place is not good for you. It's taking you down. And those people don't have your best interest at heart. And you need to move forward. And I thought, oh my God, my husband will never agree to this. We just moved here 2 years ago. My kids love going to school here. And I'm not sure how I would just be able to sell my house and move my kids out. And so I just went on faith that what she said was true and right for me, and I started moving in that direction. And I started living my life like we might move. And I started telling people that we might move. And eventually, by the end of that summer, before the next school year, I got an offer from a Waldorf school on the other side of town to come be their director of admissions, which meant that we would have to move because it was far too far for us to drive there every day with the kids. And so we did. We moved house, and we sold our house in that we had been living in across the street from the first school, and we moved the kids' school. And then I went to work for this new Waldorf school, and there was some interesting stuff starting to happen in that place. It was different than the first school. Nobody threw me under the bus or anything. But people just were not kind or inclusive. They would say things like, we don't trust you yet, so we're not going to include you in our meetings. It was just very strange. And so I went through a little bit of drama there, really tried to work it out and figure it out. And at the end of the day, I could have stayed, I guess, but it just didn't feel like I was thriving or it was authentically aligned with who I was. And I'd already spent so much work really figuring out who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing, that working in another misaligned job didn't feel like the right answer. So I stuck it out as long as I stuck it out as long as I could. I wanted to leave gracefully. I didn't want to put anybody in a bad position. So I waited until spring break, and then I gave my notice so that I would be done by spring break, which is really the end of the enrollment season. So I figured they'd be in pretty good shape. Although they didn't have a retention strategy, and they told me it was none of my business. So I think they might have a bad year next year because of retention issues. But all in all, I did what I could, given the situation I was in, to help them be in a good place. And then I quit. It wasn't right for me. And so now I'm in this new place of having money in the bank from the sale of my house, which sold for $87,000 over my asking price. And being relocated into a rental house that I don't need to stay in. And again, without a job. And so I had been offered a little side hustle by a consulting firm to do some health and benefits consulting again, just a few hours a month on an hourly basis. And so I had taken that. And so that was a little bit of cash. And I really started to look back to my 10-year plan that I had put in place 10 years earlier, where my husband and I decided that we were going to retire to Hawaii by 2021. And so for 10 years, we've been trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And so when the psychic told me to sell my house and move my kids out of their school, after the first job went south at the Waldorf School, I thought, well, maybe this is going to just expedite us onto that path. And then when the second Waldorf School job really wasn't feeling aligned with me, I realized that it really was expediting that path. And so I took the kids over spring break to Maui. We looked at some real estate over there. I definitely don't want to leave the cash from our home sale sitting in the bank uninvested. So we started looking at real estate over there. And then we found a house that we really liked. Had a really good energy, had a river behind it, like a little stream, super sweet. But I checked it with my psychic again, and she said, no. She said, there's something bigger, a little bit over your price range. You got to think more abundance. She said, don't worry about the money. Money's coming to you. I was like, is she crazy? Is that really true? And so I turned down that house. I didn't put an offer on it. And I just trusted that she was right and that my spirit guides were communicating with her. And I waited. And then when I went back to look at houses again online, I found a house. And the address of the house is 555, which adds up to 15, which 1 and 5 from the 15 adds up to 6. So a 6 numerology house is my favorite. The first house that we sold when we moved to be closer to the school was a 6 house, and it was our favorite home. We loved how that house felt. And so I always had thought if we could find a perfect 6 house again, it would be amazing. And actually, like 2 years earlier, I had said when we moved to Maui, it has to be a 6 house. And so here's this 555 house, and it's huge. And it's already licensed as a bed and breakfast, and it has a substantial income already associated with it, which would help me qualify for a real estate loan, especially right now while I'm in between jobs and I don't have any income. So I texted my realtor in Maui and I said, hey, what do you know about this house? And she said, I know everything about this house. I almost bought it. It's an amazing opportunity and has great energy. And so now I've put an offer in on the house. We found a commercial real estate lender that's working with us. And my father-in-law, who's an attorney, is helping us to draft up some of the paperwork that's needed. And so we are in escrow on a fantastic opportunity in Maui, which means that we may be moving there as soon as this summer. And so I share all of this with you to say that you got to work hard, you got to pay attention, you got to see the opportunities, you got to read self-help books, and you got to actually apply that stuff to your life. And when you notice that you're out of alignment, that you're miserable at work, things aren't going the way you thought they were going to go, when you're not thriving, you got to move out of that situation. You got to find the curves in the road and get back on track, because there is a way, there is a stream, there is a wormhole, that one that Oprah Winfrey goes through all the time, that can get you from point A to point B without so much struggle. And I think you have to check in with your guides too. If you're, meditate, or reach out to people that are able to channel that more easily than you can. I have a psychic, and she's great at it. And I also write down my dreams. I find I get a lot of intuition through dreams. My husband gets a lot of intuition when he's near water, like in the shower. Listen to those voices. When your child says, Mommy, you're going to work at my school, it might sound crazy and just like the talk of children, but children are very intuitive. And so look into those messages. I think it's been a long road for me the last 4 years, but it's really been a fast track for me to get to my authentic life in Maui, which is where I want to be, and where I feel most aligned. So I'm very excited to share this with you. I feel like lifestyle design is something I've been doing for myself for a long time, deciding how I want my life to be, saying no when it doesn't feel right anymore, and shifting. And I think small shifts, even like changing house or welcoming a new baby, those kinds of shifts can dramatically change your life. So even smaller things than that. I've been putting things up on Instagram, putting some ideas up on Instagram of how you could shift your life just subtly. Make a decision. Make a decision that you're no longer going to have any clothes in your closet that you don't love. If you don't love how you look when you put something on, if you don't feel beautiful in that article of clothing, donate it to the thrift store. Get it out of your life. Even if you have to pare down to only 3 outfits, do that. And then you'll start, once you create that space, then you have capacity to receive new gifts and new outfits and come across good opportunities to purchase new wardrobe items. But if your closet is full of stuff that's not working for you, there's no capacity to accept anything new. Nothing new will come into your life. So I say get rid of everything in your life that's not working for you, whether it's your job, whether it's your house, whether it's your kid's school, whether it's your clothing, whatever is not working for you, clear it out. Clear it out. Are you overextended? Is there too much stuff on your calendar? Clear it out. However you are as a person is how you will find yourself in your finances. And if you're not happy in your finances, then you are not happy in your life. Find those pain points and fix them. Because when you fix the things in your life that are not working for you, when you get your life working for you, your finances will start working for you. And that is a powerful shift. A powerful shift. And then also, a spreadsheet is magic. I don't know why, but spreadsheets are magic. And I will also say you have to have dreams and goals. If you can write down your biggest dream and goal, you can achieve it. It might take 10 years or 20 years, but I think everything is achievable. You have to reverse engineer it. You write down your goal and then you back into how you'll get there. It might not happen tomorrow. It might be a goal that's going to take 10 years to get there. Maui was a 10-year goal for us. I think the universe has sped us up a little bit in the last couple of years, but it's definitely was a goal that we wrote down, a goal that we talk about a lot, a goal that we spreadsheeted how we could get there. And I didn't always know exactly how we would get there. I just knew that certain things had to line up. My husband had to get his retirement. We'd have to sell our house. There was a few things that would have to happen for us to be ready to go. And those things are starting to line up. And now I'm starting to see the way that we're going to get there. I couldn't always see it, but I knew if I just made plans, if I just made goals, that I would find a way. And that's exactly how it works. Writing it down is really powerful. So I hope this has been helpful to you all to hear my journey. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of paying attention. There's no easy path. But if you do the work, you'll get there. You'll get the reward. And sometimes things seem like setbacks, but actually, in hindsight, you'll see that, if I didn't have that property management experience that was kind of a hard extra second job, I wouldn't have got through the recession. And also, I wouldn't be getting qualified by a bank to buy a 5-bedroom, 5-bath bed and breakfast, because the bank was very happy to hear that I had property management experience. And so that's going to help me qualify for this loan. So these things happen in life. We don't know why they happen, but trust that the universe is conspiring for your own good and work with the messages you're receiving. That's my that's my tip for today. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining the 4th podcast of the Free to Be Authentic podcast series. Thanks so much. Bye.